We're sipping moonshine, smoking cigars in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri. With us today is one of America's foremost fly fishermen. This fella has produced over 200 shows called The Tying Bench on PBS across most of the country, still airing in the Northeast today. Definitely one of the best fly tiers I've ever met, probably ever existed. And now he's retired down here to the Current River, lives in an unbelievable valley. When you're at his house in the morning and the fog is lifting off the river and it's out across this big green field that he sits on his porch and looks down towards the river, you feel like you found heaven. And I know for you, Mark, it's like that.
Oh, absolutely.
I am Nathan Shags McLeod.
I am Brandon Butler.
And I'm Mark Van Patten.
Living the Dream Outdoor Properties simplifies the process of buying or selling real estate.
The team of agents at Living the Dream are passionate and knowledgeable about their profession. They understand buying and selling outdoor properties because they're hunters, they're anglers, and outdoor enthusiasts themselves.
I'm personally a satisfied client of Living the Dream Outdoor Properties. When I listed my property in the Ozarks with Living the Dream, they brought me multiple offers in the first week. I couldn't believe how painless they made the entire process.
If you're looking to buy or sell an extraordinary property in Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Kentucky, or even Illinois, you should contact the team at Living the Dream Outdoor Properties. They're going to get the job done and make your real estate dream come true.
Contact Living the Dream at 855-289-3478 or online at livingthedreamland.com. That's livingthedreamland.com. I know I'm getting old, Shags.
Why's that?
Because I keep catching myself bragging to anyone who will listen about how much I love the spray foam insulation in my new house.
Yeah, that is a new one.
But it's true. I had Superior Insulation spray foam my entire new house and garage, and I couldn't be happier. The insulation is phenomenal for temperature control. It saves me tons of money on my electric and propane bills.
And the customer service must be great because I haven't heard you complain once.
It is. I couldn't be happier with Superior Insulation because they delivered a great product on time and actually came in below budget. Their team is honest, professional, and hardworking. I wholeheartedly recommend Superior Insulation to anyone in Central Missouri looking to insulate new construction. Or if you want to climate control your barn or shop, you should consider spray foam insulation.
For a healthier, more comfortable, energy efficient, and quieter home, office, or shop, contact Superior Insulation today at 573-821-3626 or on the web at superiorfoamllc.com. Doolittle Trailer Manufacturing is a family-owned and operated business that's been building quality trailers in the state of Missouri for over 40 years.
Doolittle trailers are found far beyond Missouri, though. Today, they are one of the premier trailer manufacturers in the United States, with well over 100 dealers nationwide.
No matter what kind of trailer you need, utility, dump, deck over, or equipment, Doolittle has you covered.
Every Doolittle trailer is handcrafted by hardworking Americans who are skilled in the trailer industry. Each unit is ordered, built, and finished in a process that ensures top quality, and they're delivered in a timely manner.
The company's core values and commitment to customer service are reflected in every aspect of their operation. They produce top quality trailers. All of them are made to be tougher than the rest.
Shags and I both count on our Doolittle trailers to get our outdoor equipment to the next destination. We haul our rafts on Doolittle utility trailers and all kinds of gear in our enclosed trailer.
No matter where we're going, we can trust Doolittle will get us there. Check them out online, doolittletrailers.com. That's doolittletrailers.com.
Big shout out and thanks to everyone who's taken a minute to review us online. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done it yet, we ask you to take 30 seconds and go do it today.
Like, share, rate, subscribe. Let everyone know how much you love this podcast so we can keep doing it. And be sure to follow us on all the social media platforms, Driftwood Outdoors on Instagram and Facebook, and keep submitting those mystery bait bucket questions. You can email us info@driftwoodoutdoors.com, or again, just find us on Instagram and Facebook. Hope you enjoy this new podcast.
The Driftwood Outdoors Podcast with Brandon Butler and Nathan Shags McLeod.
Now, Mark, before we get into it, because I'm going to tell a story about how we met for the first time a couple of years ago at deer camp, but here at Driftwood Outdoors, we like to look at some of the things that are happening across the country, and I got to give a shout out to an 11-year-old in Somerville, South Carolina, by the name of Manning Ruff, that there's a lake near his family home, and he hooked a bass, big fisherman at 11 years old, and while reeling it in, the hook came loose and came up and smacked him right in the face. He took one treble hook above the eye, below the eyebrow, and the other treble hook was below the eye on the upper side of his cheek. Now, he didn't have a pocket knife on him, and he couldn't reach the line to snap it off. So this 11-year-old gave himself a little slack on his line, on his pole, got on his bike, and rode his bike home holding his fishing pole with this bass lure stuck to his face, and came in the door and told Dad, "Hey, Dad, I got smacked in the face. I need some help." And Dad was even quoted saying, like, "I was trying to keep it together because I was worried, and he didn't seem worried because you couldn't see his eye. The lure was blocking the eye, the hook above and below." And they took him to the emergency room. And when they got there, the nurses and the doctor were like, "We're going to give you some pain medicine." And this 11-year-old just goes, "No, I don't want that. Just take it out now." And he sat there and just gritted his teeth and let them work on pulling this monster lure off his face. And to be even more badass at 11, what did he do the next day with an eye patch on?
Went fishing.
Back out fishing on that same lake where he just took the lure the day before. So with all of us being such avid fishermen, I was curious, have you ever experienced anything similar to that in your life? What's your worst hook story?
Yes. I was, it didn't happen to me, but I watched it happen. I was on a fishing trip with my grandparents in the Hayward, Wisconsin area. We were at Nelson Lake. I was probably 10, 11, and there was just another family next to us, and there was two boys, brothers, that I kind of spent the week hanging out with. And this is big northern, and there's muskie, so people had big plugs. His dad had a big muskie plug, and one of the brothers was ripping that muskie plug off the end of the dock. We were all standing out there fishing, and the next thing you hear is just, "Ah!" And he had reared back to rip that muskie plug, and just when he went forward, buried it into the other brother's head, the big treble hook. And they had to take that kid to the local hospital to get that lure taken out of his head. It was crazy.
Man.
Ouch.
Yeah.
There was a time that we were at Coffinberry Lake. I probably was like 14 maybe at the time, and they stocked this lake with trout on the Oregon coast and with occasional steelhead. So we're all there, early teens, just using power bait, just trying to have a fun time, put a stringer together so we can cook it on the campfire. And I remember these two younger kids coming up. For some reason, it still makes me laugh. One was really thin and the other one was a little chunky. And the thin one was just a wild man with his casting. I mean, just not looking, just zinging stuff left and right, where I told my buddy, I was like, "Dude, let's get off this dock. This kid's going to catch one of us. This is terrifying." So we're reeling our stuff up. About that time, we're like what Brandon had said, you heard the rev back and you heard the cast and you just heard a scream and a pop. As his sinker kept flying, the hook had buried in his buddy, the chunkier dude's arm, and he casted with such force, he snapped the line and left the hook in that dude's arm.
Oh.
And of course, I mean, he just started screaming, losing their mind. Parents come running off the hill, screaming it. "What'd you do this time? Ah!" Ruined the whole, I think it was Memorial Day weekend, ruined the whole weekend for him. And the best part is we saw him the next day, and he had the huge Band-Aid on his shoulder because he had to go to the ER and they had to cut it out because, I mean, you couldn't even see the hook. It buried in there so deep. And he was more bummed that he couldn't swim in the lake, that he was told that he couldn't swim and it was going to ruin his summer because he couldn't swim.
Poor guy.
Than anything else.
Well, I've never had a big lure or anything like any kind of experience like that, but being a fly fishing instructor, I've had many, many single hooks embedded in my head, ears, nose, lip. Oh, I got a good one in the lip one time. I know how the fish feels.
How'd that happen? Tell us that story.
Students, I'm teaching them casting. We're out on the water and we're actually fishing, and they're just not quite coordinated yet with their rods. And the next thing you know, they've hooked me. sometimes it's wind, that blows it off course, and sometimes just carelessness. But generally, when I get hooked, it's in the back or the back of the head. Every once in a while, I don't know how they do it. They get me in the face.
Because I went out with a guide once that was telling me that he was a fly fishing only guide, but first time streamer fishing, that he legitimately has a football helmet in his boat, that he'll put a football helmet on, because he's like, I don't mind like the single hook, smaller flies, those are easy to pop out, but if you've never streamer fished before, he busts out the football helmet, and I got the biggest kick out of that story.
Start throwing a number 4 woolly booger, and that hook is a serious hook now.
Now, another story I wanted to bring up, because it's always fun to point and laugh at Florida, that there was a woman who was pulled over earlier this year and had an alligator in her yoga pants. That she got caught with a gator in her yoga pants, and they found 40 turtles in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle backpack in her car, which the irony in that is fantastic.
Yeah, that's appropriate backpack.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If you're going to smuggle turtles and try to sell them online, you might as well have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle backpack. But she was found guilty on a handful of animal smuggling charges, because that's what she was doing. She was under an overpass in a little creek area, grabbing critters and trying to sell them online. And I think she was in like 24 months of probation, 200 hours of community service. But the reason I bring this up is because there was another story about a boxing champ in Florida that just got charged for letting his cougar escape his Florida home. And I started doing some research, because I remember watching a documentary called The Elephant in the Living Room, and Missouri got brought up. Because in this documentary, it was talking about exotic pets and the dangers of owning big cats and venomous snakes and just all the things that you don't want as a pet. And Missouri has one of the largest exotic animal auctions in the country. I don't know if you guys were aware of this.
No, I didn't know that.
So I did some research for this, and Missouri does not ban the private possession of dangerous wild animals and only requires a permit for certain species. We're talking you can have a lion, a tiger, a leopard, a jaguar, cheetah, mountain lion, wolf, bear. Any of those can be your pet in the state of Missouri. And Missouri is host to the largest pet chimpanzee breeder in the country and the nation's largest exotic animal auction, like we were talking about. It's actually located in Macon, Lowley Brothers Livestock Market. It's insane. But with that, Missouri ranks first in the country for the number of minors injured by captive bears since 1990, and then Missouri ranks 9th in the country for the number of dangerous incidents involving big cats.
Are you familiar with that animal rescue place just outside of Columbia?
Yeah, I volunteered there one time.
I've been there for their open house. Went through and saw their lions and everything they've got. That's a pretty neat place. They got tigers.
No, they got mountain lions, tigers. I actually volunteered down there and helped them clean out the wolf dens. Like, I crawled down into the little shelter and pulled out all the hay and crammed in fresh stuff. But yeah, man,
What's that place called?
I can't remember, man. Putting me on the spot.
I can't remember either.
I'll have to look it up.
So have you guys traveled 72 between Salem and Rolla and seen the camel?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because there's a zebra, too, in Columbia heading out to the Devil's Ice Box.
Yeah, I'm always looking for deer and turkeys, and I always scan that field, and there's a camel.
Yeah, unreal. Well, I guess, when you think about it, if climate change does turn us into a desert, camel might be very helpful.
We should start a breeding population.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, like, chimpanzees and the monkeys, those things terrify me. They never. But growing up as a kid, huge Mike Tyson fan. And I don't know if you know the story, but when Mike Tyson was in jail, he was talking to his car dealer about getting some new cars. And his dealer was complaining that this guy owed him money, and he was going to go and take his car so he could trade them for horses. And Mike Tyson's like, what? You can get horses for cars? He's like, oh, man, I can get lions and tigers. So that's how Mike Tyson ended up with his baby tigers, is because over a phone call in prison about cars, the dealer was like, oh, no, I'm going to get horses. And that transitioned into tigers. And he's like, I want 3 cubs by the time I'm out. And when he got out, he had 3 baby tiger cubs waiting for him. He traded in like a Ferrari for 3 baby tiger cubs. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever growing up, of owning a big cat. Is there any type of exotic animal you guys would ever want as a pet? The older I get, the more I realize how idiotic and dangerous that sounds. But
there was a guy named Roy Boy and he had a tattoo shop in Gary, Indiana. It's still there, Roy Boys, and he's passed away. But he had a big dually truck with a cage, like a metal bar cage, and he had 2 white tigers.
Oh, wow.
And he would bring them out to Lake Michigan on the beach and park his big truck there with his cage full of tigers, and people would walk around staring at it.
Is there any type of big critter that you would consider having as a pet?
I think a bear would be cool. Like, I'd have a rescue bear, but I wouldn't know about how to take care of a bear.
That was another thing that I found. It was talking about one of the incidences in Missouri, and it was a roadside petting zoo that was just popping up, and this woman had a bear that attacked like 6 of the kids or something like that.
Oh, my.
I was like, what are you doing using a bear in a petting zoo? Only in Missouri would that work. So now that we got our fix of big, terrifying critters in the state of Missouri, the real reason, Mark, that I definitely wanted to get you on our podcast, the Driftwood Outdoors podcast, is because when I first met you 3 years ago at my first ever deer camp down here at Driftwood Acres, you had told the most incredible story. Again, we were smoking cigars, passing around some moonshine around a campfire. You gave me a glimpse into the history of who you are and your childhood, and it has stuck with me for nearly 3 years, that you had told a story of growing up in the mean streets of the San Francisco Bay Area on the Oakland side, and how you were in a legitimate gang and some of the gang activity, and then how you ended up in such a small rural area of Missouri. I was hoping that you could walk us through that expedition, that adventure, that craziness that was your life.
Well, I tell you, and crazy is probably almost an understatement. That was a very stressful time for a kid. I was involved in gangs at an early age. Actually, the first time I got into the gang, I was 9. First time that I experienced gunshots and knife wounds, I was 10.
So explain to me how you get into a gang at 9 years old.
Well, and the way it was kind of done back then where we were, your school district was your turf. And our school was the Hillview Hawks. Well, that was our gang, and so everybody in that gang was from that school district. You didn't go into someone else's school district wearing your school colors or your gang colors. And you just kind of migrate into it. It's a matter of, if you're not affiliated, you're probably going to get the crap beat out of you on a regular basis without any kind of backup or assistance. And back then we just all stuck together and looked out for each other, and that's kind of how it evolved. It was like a family thing. The family life at home was not good for probably every one of us, and that's why we kind of gravitated in that direction. Anyhow, there was a point when things got kind of out of hand, and I realized that I needed to leave. And I knew that I had some grandparents that lived in Missouri, which I had no idea what Missouri was, just a place. And I didn't even know their last name. We had always called. I had met my grandmother once when she had come to California on a train to see us. Now you got to remember, I'm an old guy, so it was a long time ago. But anyhow.
So yeah, so you're 9 years old. You're in Oakland. What year is that?
That was in the early 60s.
Early 60s?
Yeah.
So, because you told a story around a campfire, too, about some of the big brawls that you guys would have.
Yeah,
and
and the gun that was made with a rubber band.
That's exactly what I was heading to. Like
a car antenna. They called them zip guns.
The zip guns and the knife fights. Like, legitimately, like, I'm not trying to glorify any, like, gang violence or anything, but this just fascinates me, and it'll tie into fly fishing when we get there. But if you're comfortable, I mean, tell us a few of these stories of you being 10 years old with knives, getting in knife fights.
And getting shot.
Yeah, and you got shot.
I'm not real comfortable with it, honestly. And so I won't go into real detail. But yeah, we kind of had an unspoken rule. No guns were allowed. One gang would do something to upset another gang. Somebody in leadership had gone over to their district in our colors or something, would cause a row. And then they would set up, okay, we're all going to meet at this vacant lot at a certain time. We're going to fight this out. It was just kids fighting. But they were kids all the way up to almost 20 years old too, 16, 18-year-olds as well.
So when you're 10, you could be going up against a 19, 20-year-old and just something out of the movie like West Side Story, just a straight up street brawl in an alley.
Just a fight.
Wow.
And you were allowed to have knives or chains, ball bats, clubs, but no one was supposed to bring guns. Well, no one brought actual manufactured guns. They brought ones they made themselves. They were single shot 22 basically. It was a telescoping car antenna that was popular at the time, had one section that was just right for a 22, and they would mount it to a wooden handle. They had a nail and they had a rubber band, and they would be able to drop that nail on it. They were not accurate. They were up close type things. Generally no one got killed. My best friend did. He caught one in the temple. And that was that. It took him a while to pass, but while we were there, about 15 minutes, but he did. Anyhow, that was when I decided it was time to get out of Dodge.
And that was the catalyst that finally...
That was it, yeah.
...convinced you to leave.
Yeah.
And what age was that?
I was 12.
12? So, I mean, you legitimately were, living one of the most dangerous lives I've heard in for like 3 to 4 years.
Well, it was dangerous at the time. We had fights, but it wasn't always dangerous. It was just those brawls were bad, and somebody always ended up getting hurt and sometimes killed.
And I mean, and could that start just from anything, from someone just?
No, usually it had to be pretty intense for the gangs decide to get together and fight. But sometimes I think boredom. Somebody just decided, all right, I'm mad at them. Let's go take care of this. And in actuality, they were just bored.
So, you already said that you didn't know much about your grandparents. You knew they lived in Missouri.
Yeah.
Missouri's a big place. You didn't know if it was Kansas City. You didn't know if it was St. Louis.
No, I didn't know anywhere in particular at all.
So you're just going to come to the state of Missouri.
Yeah.
And when did that that happened when your best friend passed away? Shortly after. So like within a couple of days?
No, actually it took me a while to build up the desire to go. I had sisters and a brother and a mom and a stepdad that was in trouble with the law. It was kind of a messed up situation, but I was the oldest, and leaving them was something I struggled with. And for, I'd say maybe 30 days or so. It's been a while, and I don't recall.
At 12 years old?
Yeah.
Can you tell your story of your dad?
My dad got involved with another guy and decided they needed to get rich quick, and they started printing up phony money. And he ended up having to go to Mexico and died there.
Wow.
So did you talk to your mom about going to Missouri, or did you sneak out at
No, I
night?
didn't tell my mom I was leaving. She found out when I found my grandparents.
All right, so your mind is made up.
Yeah.
You know that your grandparents live in this big state somewhere. You go out on the highway and stick out your thumb.
Yeah. The semi-truck picked me up. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Missouri." He said, "I am too." He just happened to be going the same direction. And he was going to Lebanon, Missouri to, I think it was a furniture company, to pick up a load. And drop off something somewhere else. Anyhow, he picked me up, and I from the moment I got on that truck until I landed in Lebanon, Missouri, was 36 hours later. Because he'd stop and stay the night at a different place. He didn't drive all the way through. And anyhow, I'd sleep in the truck, and he'd go in and get a motel room. I was a big kid for my age, so nobody bothered me, And back then, people were a little different than they are now. As a rule, those truck drivers were all pretty nice guys and honest people. So, and I lucked out and got one like that.
But that's incredible to think at 12 years old of I couldn't even fathom riding my bike the 5 miles into town to hang out with a buddy or something like that, let alone just a up and take off, and I'm on the highway. My thumb is out, and whatever happens, because you had briefly mentioned you didn't even know your grandma's real name.
Yeah, but
correct?
see, you didn't have a gang coming after you that wanted to do you in.
No, that's true.
Yeah, I was motivated
That's
to get the heck out of Dodge. Trust me, it didn't just happen to be because my best friend died. It's because of a number of things that happened that said if I didn't leave, I wouldn't be here today. So anyhow, I headed out and got the ride, got off at Lebanon. And what's interesting, he let me off at that truck stop there in Lebanon. And I got back on, it was Route 66 and went 944. And I got back on Route 66 and I walked a little ways to another exit. And I decided, it was getting kind of late in the afternoon. I decided, well, I'm just going to stop somewhere around here. And I walked off the exit, and there was a Highway 32 going east out of Lebanon, 2-lane highway. I'll just go that way. Maybe there's a place, some woods I can crash in. So I started walking. I hadn't walked very far until this black old beat-up Ford pickup truck. Yeah, I'll take that back. It was a Dodge pickup truck. Pulled up beside me, and there was an old farmer sitting there. It was one of those classic old guys, just dried up to nothing, bib overalls, not a tooth in his head. He looks over. Now, remember where I'm coming from, right?
Oh, yeah. This has got to be a completely different world.
Oh,
to you.
yeah. And he looked over at me and says, "Where are you going, boy?" I said, "I don't know. I'm looking for my grandparents." He said, "Well, get on in here, boy." So I got in the truck, and he started grilling me. "So where are you from?" I told him, "Well, California." "Oh, that's interesting. Where are you going?" I said, "I honestly don't know. I'm looking for my grandparents." He said, "Well, where do they live?" I said, "I don't know. In Missouri." He said, "Boy, this is a big state." And he goes, "Well, what's their name?" I said, "Well, I really don't know that either." And he thought, of course, I'd lost it all. Anyhow, finally I said, "The only name I ever remember hearing was Grandma Nebo." And so I said that to him. He goes, "Well, now, isn't that a coincidence?" He said, "I live in Nebo, Missouri." So we got to chatting a little bit more, and finally he said, "You have sisters and brother?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's a couple of people live there in Nebo, not too far from me, that's got grandkids in California." And I said, "Oh, yeah?" He said, "Yeah, their name is Mildred and George Van Patten." And I said, "That's them. I recognize that name. That had been my name before I took my stepdad's last name." Mm-hmm. And so anyhow, it turns out it was one of his neighbors within about 5 miles of where he lived, and he just drove me right to their doorstep.
So you were born Mark Van Patten, and
Yes.
your name changed?
Well, it didn't actually change. I just went by a different name because my mom had remarried.
Okay. And then you just went back to Van
And then I
Patten.
went back to my real name, yeah.
That's such an incredible story. At 12 years old, to hit the highway, you're leaving the big city behind and all that violence, and you just know of a state and a nickname, and for that truck driver to get you to the city, the Lebanon, to on the right highway, and then to be picked up again. I mean, it's 2 pickups, and you were legitimately being delivered to your grandparents where
Yeah.
you only knew a nickname.
Yeah. Now, if anybody tells me there's no such thing as a guardian angel, I'd call him a liar.
Yeah, that sounds divine.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
like you would see that in a movie, and you'd go, that's not real. There is no way that would happen. That's absolutely amazing. So walk us through, then, the big arrival.
What does your grandma's face look like?
Yeah,
when
you,
show up?
yeah, my
you
grandmother.
made it in like 40 hours. Like, this is insane.
Now, by the way, my book is in publication right now, and this story is kind of in there.
We'll give the book a shout out.
It's called Moonshine and Watermelons, and the publisher is in the editing process right now, and next step is cover design and so on. But it's what it is the story of me coming from the big city to this little country community in Missouri, and all the really fascinating, interesting, and colorful people. It's more tongue-in-cheek humor, and just a whole series of short stories, an anthology, basically, of growing up among these wonderful people, which really were my roots, because that's where my family came from, right there where my grandparents lived. And anyhow, That's the gist of it. It'll be available on Amazon and all that.
I'm definitely buying a copy. I'm going to have to get you to sign it. So, again, what was the reaction of your grandparents when you just showed up on their doorstep?
Well, at first, it was night. And they didn't know. They saw this pickup pull up in their yard. They saw some guy get out with a little suitcase and stand there in a pitch black. And I saw, like I said in my book, I saw this orange rectangle open up, and it was the door up on the front porch, which was just, about 6 or 8 feet off the ground. And this old man was standing there kicking at a cat to keep it from coming in. And he goes, "Who's out there?" And I told him who I was, but I used my other last name. And he said, "What?" And I asked him if this was the Van Pattens, and he said, "Yeah." And I told him my name again. Well, my grandmother could hear us, and she immediately knew, because she knew this other last name. She come flying out there. Now, my grandmother's like 4'8", and about as round as she was tall. She come flying off that front porch and hit the ground running and grabbed me up and about squashed me to death, hugging me. I remember all I could smell was food. She was cooking. And my granny could cook. Nobody could hold a candle to my grandmother's cooking. But anyhow, she drugged me in and started explaining to my grandfather who I was, because he was still clueless.
Had you ever met him before?
I'd met her once when I was maybe 8.
Wow.
7 or 8.
So what was going through your head? I mean, that's got to be a pretty terrifying concept of rolling up on this house at dark, and you've met your grandma once, and it was like five years ago.
Yeah. I was pretty young. She came out on a train, like I had mentioned earlier, to visit us. But it was odd to me, but not so bad, because I went into the living room and there was a television, so it wasn't that far back in the woods. Hey, they got a TV here. Cool. And then I saw my grandfather poking on some big metal box with fire shooting out of it. I was pretty fascinated by that. All boys like fire.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have expectations? Like, had you worked up some sort of plan in your mind about, I'm going to ask them if I can live with them, I'm going to try to, go to school here? Or were you just going to get away for a little while and go home? Did you have a plan?
Yeah, and that was kind of my plan, was I'd get away for a while and go home. And so I was thinking more like I was. Of course, I didn't know this word back then, but I was thinking I was like on a sabbatical.
You're just on the lam.
Yeah, on the lam, and someday going back, no permanent route type thing. Well, after I got here, and was able to enjoy the absolute love that my grandparents gave to me, and then getting introduced to fly fishing, which was almost immediately after I got here. They got me into fly fishing, teaching me. Now, my grandfather's way of teaching you to fly fish is not my style. He will show you once, hand you the fly rod, walk away, and say, "I'll be back in 30 minutes to check on you." When he comes back, he'll say, "That's not what I told you to do." He'll show me one more time and walk away. So you got to really watch him to try to figure it out. And anyhow, I didn't have expectations. I really didn't know what to expect. I just thought, their family, they got to take me. And if they'll just let me stay here for a while, then I can go back. And I can go back same way I got here, and so...
Well, yeah, it was a pretty easy trip in retrospect. That was two
It seemed easy to
stops,
me, yeah. So, anyhow, that's kind of where I was with that. And then, of course, they started getting me into fly fishing. And it was... I tell you, and I said this in my book, too, they had to be saints to have raised me, because I was a mess, thinking about where I came from.
Oh, yeah.
And what I came to, and this culture shock that I was going through. I mean, all these hillbillies, and I just didn't fit.
Well, it's like getting dropped off on Mars from where you were from.
When they took me to school, to sign me up for school, and marched me down the hallway to this classroom. The hallway looked like a normal classroom. The classroom looked normal, but I looked in there, and there's right there by the door, sitting at a desk, is this kid, same age as me, because it was a class I was going to go to, wearing bib overalls, no shirt, and no shoes. And I thought I entered the hillbilly twilight zone, right there.
So, compare that really quickly of the school you came from, what you were used to how many kids were in this school?
Yeah, the school I went to, even though I lived in a really poor area, right across the road, basically we were like on the other side of the tracks, but on the other side of the road, it was a very affluent area, and so the school was too. And I remember in third and fourth grade, we had science labs equal to what they had in high school at this school here in Missouri. But it turned out there was a big research facility there, and all the scientist kids went to this school. So science was a big thing. Also, we started learning to speak Spanish in kindergarten.
Wow.
All the way through. It's just a lot of different way they taught things. We had an art teacher in California that had to be internationally known. He was blind, but he taught art, which is fascinating. I don't know how he did it, but he did it.
So you leave that school, and then how many are in your class now?
Well, my graduating class had around 24 or so in it here.
What school was it?
Plato,
Missouri.
Yeah, and if I would have stayed out there, I would have had a graduating class of 1,200 probably.
Yeah,
real difference.
How was that culture shock for you? I can't imagine you just assimilated very easily. That had to have been a pretty bumpy experience trying to get along with your background and what the weight and the stuff you've been carrying to suddenly sitting next to homeboy and nothing but overalls and no shoes and no shirt. I can't imagine you guys became best buds on the first day.
No, and there was a lot of fighting, and I was used to that anyways. So, we go out behind the shop class building, or we go out behind the feed store there at Plato and duke it out.
Anybody ever get you?
No, actually, I never got really whooped bad.
Undefeated.
Undefeated.
The champion.
Still carrying that belt around.
But I will admit there was this one that was a little bitty guy. I mean, that was close.
That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, that was the one thing that my dad always taught me was you never pick on the little guy because he's been picked on his whole life. You'd rather go up against the big guy that doesn't know what it feels like to really get hit hard.
Yep.
That's the one. And I've learned that lesson too.
Yeah, I had to deal with hey boy from the land of fruits and nuts, that kind of stuff. They asked me, do you know the difference between a bull and a heifer? Well, I don't even know what a bull and a heifer is.
So it's kind of ironic that you experienced a similar power struggle on a totally different landscape.
Yes.
You see that youth is youth no matter where you're at.
Where you go, that's right. And eventually, after you earn their respect, pretty soon, you never get fully accepted. Even though my family roots are from there, I was not born there.
You're always the city kid.
Yeah, and so that didn't go away, but the respect did come and the fighting got stopped. And one of the ways I assimilated so easily in a very short period of time, not necessarily at school, but in life in the Ozarks, was my best friend that I met. My grandmother took me to a little tiny country church, and you're going to love this. It was all gravel road. And we had to cross a cattle guard and go through a man's pasture. And then we come to a gate at his house and drive through his barnyard. And then out the other side, and you got to open and close the gates as you go. And then out through another pasture to this church. I was way back in church in the woods. And there was a kid there named Donald. He became my best friend, and he was just as shy as he could be. I mean, he just wouldn't talk to anybody hardly. Well, I brought him out of that because I'm just exactly the opposite. But anyhow, we hit it off. And the first experience I had with him after we kind of talked and hung out for a minute there at church, as soon as church got over, he said, "You want to go hang out?" I said, "Sure. Let me check with my grandmother, And I asked Granny if I could stay with Donald. She said, yeah. So we go out to the parking lot, and there's this old beat-up red pickup truck, Chevy pickup truck. It's got different colored fenders. And anyhow, he gets in the driver's seat and says, hop in. So I hop in. I figure it's his dad's, and we're just going to talk, right? No. He fires it up, and we head down the road. And he's like 11, I said, what are you doing? You're going to get us arrested. He looked at me like I had come from the moon. Arrested? He said, who's going to arrest us out here? I said, well, what's your dad going to do? He goes, oh, Pa, he don't care. I've been driving forever. And, well, I believed it, too. Folks let their kids drive out in these country roads pretty early. They got to drive the tractor when it's hay season and so on. So anyhow, Donald, he really did help me to assimilate into the Ozark way of life. We did everything. We went caving. We fished. We decided one time we found his grandfather's old forge, hand crank forge. We learned how to forge. We made branding irons for some of the neighbors. Oh my gosh, what all we you're gonna love this. Long story with it, but I won't go into it. We went to Woodstock.
I was hoping you were going there.
Oh, what?
I was going to ask if Donald was who you went to Woodstock.
That was Donald.
You got to tell the long version of this story.
Okay, well,
I mean, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, so we
Hey,
got to
that's
hear
right.
this. We got to hear the story.
So they're 15. Keep in mind when this happens.
no, I'm 15 and he's 14, and well, his father had taken a cow or steer or something into the sale barn in Springfield. Well, anytime he'd take cattle up, Donald and I would ride along, and there's this. At that time, it was called a head shop, called the Kaleidoscope, and now they sell records and stuff. But back then, they had albums and 8-tracks and things too, besides paraphernalia. And so we always dropped off there, and right next to it was Cheong's Whataburger. So we always had to get a Whataburger, or we got Springfield cashew chicken, because that's where it started, right there in Cheong's. Anyhow, then we go over to the Kaleidoscope and look at records and 8-tracks. And for those of you who don't know what 8-tracks are, sorry.
Yeah, look it up.
Yeah, Google it. Yeah. I see this chick standing over looking at albums, and she is a fox. She's got the bell bottoms and the halter top and just looking really good. So I got up the nerve to go flirt with her. I walk over to her and say hi, and she goes, oh, hi, are you here to get your tickets too? I said, tickets? She goes, yeah, to the concert. I said, oh, yeah. I didn't know what she was talking about. Yeah. I didn't want to look stupid. I said, but where do you get them? We just got here. She goes, right there at the counter. There's a sign right there. So I walked over there and said, Donald, we got to buy tickets to this concert. I want to see this chick there. She's really nice. He said, okay, cool. I'm going to go to a concert. And so we bought the tickets, $15 a piece, if I remember. I'm not sure on the price, but I think that's what it was. Anyhow, I said goodbye to her, told her I was here at the concert, and we leave. Well, on the way back from Springfield to Plato, I looked down at the tickets, and it's in New York. I said, Donald, we can't go to this concert. He goes, why? I said, look at your ticket, man. It's in New York. What? Oh, well, we'll go anyways, because that's how he rolls. If you tell him you can't do something, now he's 90 pounds soaking wet as a grown man, okay, little bitty guy, banty rooster. If you tell him he can't do something, he'll do it, and he'll show you he can do it. He'll do it right, too. Very intelligent, but feisty. Love to start stuff and then get behind me and let me finish it.
We should put him and the mayor in the same room and see who comes out alive.
Anyhow, we decided we were going. So their farm is he's like the fourth generation on that farm. His grandpa or great-grandpa one had built a sawmill, and back then they ran it off a tractor or rim or whatever, but he had it set up on an old pickup truck rear axle and would run the sawmill. We cut timber, cut it into lumber, and hauled it to a treating facility where they treat lumber and sell it, posts and so on, and made the money to buy a car. We bought this car from this guy. It had no seats in it. It was a 1961 or 2 Plymouth Belvedere.
With no seats.
With no seats. So we bought these. We didn't buy them. We found these 2 foremost milk crates, orange milk crates. Bolted them to the floor, put a pillow on them, and drove that thing around. This is going to work. We made us a pallet in the back since there's no seats, and it went all the way into the trunk. Somebody had cut out the supports back there, and the guy who we bought it from, and we made a pallet where we could sleep in it. So we load up with beanie weenies, Vienna sausages, saltine crackers, and some money, and we head for this concert.
This is amazing.
Neither one of us legal to drive, and we're sitting on milk crates going down the road. Anyhow, we get as far as Cleveland, and I'm putting the last of the money in the gas tank. I said, Don, we don't have enough money to get home. Oh, my gosh, what are we going to do? I mean, our parents didn't know where we were. My grandparents didn't know. They thought we were camping down on the Ruby Doo because we did that all the time. And that's what we told them we were doing, too. So, anyhow, this van pulls in just then. It's one of those good old-fashioned hippie vans, right? Got the flowers on it. It says Woodstock or bust on the side. These guys get out, and they're pumping some gas. And I said, you guys going to Woodstock? Yeah. Said, you got your tickets? Oh, no, we figured we'd get something when we got there. I said, oh, you won't get tickets when you get there. They're sold out. I said, but I got 2. And he said, oh, would you sell them? I said, yeah, I'll sell them. I sold those tickets for $75 a piece. And we went on to Woodstock with no tickets. Didn't matter. We got there. The fences were all down. People were walking in. And we had a ton of money. So we were doing good. Nasty place. Oh, my gosh. And I spent most of my time chasing around trying to keep Donald out of trouble because that's his middle name. And so I didn't have nearly as much fun as he did. But we got to see some really great music and groups and got back.
Did you find the girl?
No, never saw her. Oh. I doubt she was there. There were so many people there. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, how far was the hike in? Did you have to hike?
We didn't. No, Donald wouldn't let me stop. You know, the road's got cars on both sides, bumper to bumper, for miles. He just said, keep going, keep going. So we're getting closer and closer. We found where somebody had slid off a kind of a shallow embankment thing there. Not bad. It was muddy. It had been raining really bad. And somebody had helped them get out, and no one was in it. We just slid sideways into it. And parked. So we were maybe a quarter to half a mile away. Not too bad. And we'd just walk back each night, sleep in the back, get back out, and go the next day. We went into the town, Bethany, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, went into the town, and the people there were not very nice to us. They didn't want us in their store. We were muddy, dirty, and they didn't want us in there. They wouldn't sell us anything. Told us, get out of town. Don't come back. So we, again, just feasted on Vienna sausages and beanie weenies right out of the can, those little cans, and crackers. And fortunately, we packed a lot.
Give us a few of the magical musical moments.
Well, Jimi Hendrix, Star Spangled Banner was absolutely breathtaking. One of my favorites was Joe Cocker. That was an unbelievable concert. He was so spastic on stage, and I did not know he was like that. And I'd heard his music, but I didn't know he was like that naturally. So the first time I saw him, I thought, man, look at that guy. He's drunk as a skunk. He's up there just, all spastic all over the stage. Well, no, that's just his way. And he started singing. I knew who it was. And, oh, my gosh, that's Joe Cocker. And I just about floored. And then Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. You know, I'd heard of them. I'd never heard their music, but I'd heard of them. And they get ready to start. They were at night. And Joe Cocker was during the day. But anyhow, they got ready to start, and the crowd just got quiet. And I don't know which one it was because I was so far back I couldn't really see him, but I could hear him real well. Said, this is our first gig, and we are scared shitless. Beep. And the crowd just went nuts, and that was the most volume of crowd yelling that I'd heard the whole time. It was very moving, and they did an amazing job. Well, Country Joe and the Fish.
Because with Jimi Hendrix, like he negotiated that no one would play after him, and then apparently that backfired because you were there, but that his performance didn't start till like 4 or like 5 o'clock in the morning. Right. It was like super early because everyone got pushed back, and he didn't want anyone to perform behind him, and he ended up not playing in front of as many people because of how late it got pushed back.
Well, he didn't start out playing in front of as many people, but by the time he was getting about halfway through, he had a lot of people.
Everyone was coming.
Everybody was coming out, and it was, I don't know how many, but from where I was, it was a sea of humanity. Just unbelievable. You could not breathe.
What are some more bands that were there? Who else played?
CCR.
Country Joe and the Fish.
Did Dylan do Woodstock?
No, Dylan was not there. Gosh.
Grateful Dead was there. Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yeah. No, Creedence wasn't there. Mm-hmm. I don't remember hearing them. I must have slept in that one. And I love John C. Fogerty.
So what were some of the standout people watching experiences? Because we all know everyone was tripping their balls off. Some better trips than others. I mean, the chaos, the nakedness, the hippiness. What were a couple of the things that just stood out with just the crowd?
Loudspeaker going, "Don't eat the brown acid."
They announced it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, over and over. They say the brown acid's poison. It's not. It's just bad acid, That was wild. And then going down, there was they called it a pond, but it was a big lake. And everybody's so muddy, everybody's out there trying to get cleaned up, but they see feces floating around in the water.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty nasty. There was just too many people. The Johnny on the spots, porta potties, were full the first day, and no one ever came and changed them out. It was really bad. There was one lady there, I remember, everybody just called her Mother. And I don't know who she was, but everybody was getting hungry because nobody in town would sell them food, for one thing. And there was way more people than they thought, and what few vendors were there couldn't keep up with the demand. She showed up with food and just gave it out. And she was there, I guess, 2 of the 3 days, if I remember. I don't remember exactly. That was a long time ago. But anyhow, I think she was there 2 of the 3 days, handing out food and taking people in and helping them with water or whatever they needed. And they just called her Mother.
And you stayed there for all 3 days?
Yeah, we did. We were there late on the first day, and then we left. We waited till it thinned down some because we didn't want to have to deal with the traffic. Fortunately, there were still enough people that would help us get our car out because it was sitting on the mud on the frame. And they got us out. And anyhow, we headed back home, and we didn't want to say that we'd gone camping and didn't go camping, so we headed right to our favorite camp spot, spent 2 days there, and went home.
Wow, that is an amazing story. And the car made it the whole way? And
we kept that car for a long time. We finally got to where we didn't have any money, and the tires all went flat. We were driving it on country roads on the rims. And the last time we drove it, we come down the steep hill and hit this rock, and it just rolled over on its top and slid out into the woods. It's still there.
So on one hand,
this is an amazing life.
You're this incredible rebel, living life to the fullest, driving to Woodstock at 15. On the other hand, you become an ordained preacher before you're 20.
Yeah. At age 16. I was a pastor of a small country Southern Baptist church for 3 years.
What was that like?
That was a real change. and a serious learning experience for me, too. I mean, my congregation were gray hairs. And I was 16 years old. And I had to be able to preach to them in a way that they could appreciate. And I'm surprised they put up with me for the 3 years they did, honestly. I mean, I didn't have the background, the rooting and grounding, but fortunately, during that time period, I also got a scholarship to a Baptist college, and on a ministerial scholarship, and was able to utilize a lot of that education as a seminary-type education during that 3-year period, and that helped. But there became a point in my life when I realized that, my faith was strong, but I didn't need to be a preacher. That was not what I was supposed to be doing.
Is that one of those churches where they speak in tongues and roll around on the floor?
No, that's Pentecostal.
So you weren't throwing snakes around?
No, no snakes.
Like that?
The worst thing I remember was a flying squirrel getting in the piano. And we caught it in a cigar box. And I don't know where that came from. Yeah, Roy Tan box.
What did you have to go through to become a preacher?
Just basically all I had to do was decide to do it.
Oh, you didn't get officially ordained as
No, I got
preacher?
licensed. I did get licensed. I had to be sponsored by another pastor, and then the Southern Baptist Convention licensed me. Now, I was not ordained, but I could marry people. I couldn't do funerals, but I could marry people, which I think is interesting.
Woodstock at 15 on milk crates and a beater car and
preaching the next year.
Preaching the next year.
Must have ate the brown acid. So at some point we've got to transition this to fishing.
Yeah.
Well,
I could sit here and listen to him tell stories all day long.
I'll tell you about my first fly fishing experience. and trout fishing with my grandfather. I'd been there not even a year yet. Still, I arrived in November, and that spring, well, right before March 1, my grandfather said, okay, you need to learn to fish, and you go with me on opening day at Bennett Spring. And that's when I was telling you about how he teaches you how to fly cast. He took me out in the front yard, right by the old mimosa tree there in the yard, and he took this old bamboo fly rod, cast it a couple of times. He said, okay, this is how you get the line out there. He said, and you fish it, and then you pick it up and you do it again. I said, okay. He said, do it just like that. I'll be back in 30 minutes to check on you. So, of course, I had it all wrapped around me and everything else. He came back and said, that's not what I showed you. And he showed me again, and then here we go through the process. Well, finally, I paid enough attention. I kind of got it down, and I could actually cast. And he said, okay, let's go down to the pond. And we went down to the pond, and it had a little ice on the edge, but there were bluegill in there, and they were slow, but I caught one. And that was my first fish on a fly rod, was that little bluegill. And he made me turn it loose. And it actually made me cry because that was my first fish. I didn't want to turn it loose. And he gave me this little talk about how important it is to let the little ones grow, to give you a better fight. And because I turned it loose, that fish would make sure I would be the only one who could catch it later. So anyhow, then I felt good about it. It was BS, but I felt good about it.
That's a fun little story, though. And it's you've never fished before, never picked up a rod or anything. This is brand new to you.
Right. All I knew was concrete and asphalt up to that point, and the ocean or the bay. But anyhow, and I hadn't fished it. So he took me to Bennett, and again, this is all in my book, but he took me to Bennett Springs, and he kept telling me over and over, now, we're going to be in the water, and it's going to be dark. He said, we're going to wade into our favorite spots. I didn't have one, but he did, and I was going to be by him. And we're going to stand there and wait till the whistle blows. I said, okay. He said, you can't fish before the whistle blows. And they told me that 50 times all the way there. And my grandfather, it was 45 miles to Bennett from our house, and he drove 20 miles an hour. So we had to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning to get there to get our tags. So anyhow, we get there, we get out there, and it is pitch dark. I can't really see anything much except my grandfather next to me, and I can see a few other fishermen there. And all of a sudden, I hear a siren go off. I thought, uh-oh, somebody started fishing before the whistle blew. They're getting arrested. And I'm standing there thinking about, you dummies. And then I noticed my grandfather's fishing. Hey, what are you doing? He said, why aren't you fishing? I said, the whistle didn't blow yet. He goes, what do you think that was? I said, that was not a whistle.
I know what a siren is. Yeah. That was a siren.
So he said, well, that's what we call the whistle. Start fishing. And it was, first thing in the morning at Bennett Springs on opening day, there's tons of fish, and they are biting anything. Black and yellow marabou. Laid that out there, bam, immediately had a fish on, and it was a big one. It was over 3 pounds. First fish, first trout, 3 pounds. And my grandfather was, of course, then he was proud of me. Before that, he was really embarrassed that I was even had the same last name. But he bragged all his buddies in. Yeah, he caught this big old 3-pounder. And we took it home and ate it. That was my first trout fishing, fly fishing experience, and I was eat up.
And that was it. You were done.
It. Yeah. From there on, he taught me to tie flies. I was tying flies like a maniac, going through all his feathers. Which is another story about the neurotic roosters.
Well, what's that story? Well, I just want to hear you tell stories. That's why you're here. I love your stories, man.
He had these roosters that were his feather roosters. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that at the time, but I'm using all his feathers. You go through stages when you're a fly tyer. When you first begin, you're trying to tie the stuff they showed you to tie, and then you start going crazy and making your own creations, which wouldn't catch a fish on a dime, but they look cool to you. Anyhow, you go through that process, and then eventually you get to where you're actually tying stuff that you use to fish with. Well, I was still in that crazy creative form, and my grandfather said, don't make plans for this Saturday night. You've used up all my feathers, and we got to get more. I said, okay. Thought we were going to go to town or something, And so anyhow, that Saturday after dinner, and the chores were all done, he says, Mark, go get a clothes hanger out of your granny's closet there, one of them wire ones. Meet me out at the chicken house, okay? I heard him rustling around the kitchen. I heard him get a paper bag out and flop it to open it. He walked out there, and I met him out there. And I'm thinking, what are we going to do with a clothes hanger and a paper bag? And finally, he said, okay, now what I want you to do, he says, you know the difference between the roosters and the hens, right? I said, oh, yeah. They got spurs. He said, that's right. And they're bigger. He said, I've got 4 in there, and I want feathers off all 4 of them. So I'm thinking, you're going to make me kill those roosters? He said, you're not going to kill those roosters. He said, you're going to go in there with that clothes hanger. You're going to get right up underneath one of them and wrap it around his leg with that hook on the end and tuck him under your arm like a football and bring him out here. Well, first of all, it never went that easy. But I finally got the first one out there and still thinking he's going to wring their neck. But no, he just plucked some feathers off the cape, plucked some feathers off the saddle, threw them in the bag, said, take him in, go get the other one. Well, we went through that whole process, got all 4 chickens, got lots of feathers. And the next morning was Sunday morning. Granny was getting ready for church. We just got the cattle fed and the chores done. And he said, hey, Mark, he said, your grandmother's running a little behind. You go let out the chickens and give them some corn. He was setting me up, and he knew it. So I go out there, totally oblivious, open the door. Those 4 roosters were standing right there looking at me. And I think in the book I said it's 3, the 3 amigos, but there was actually 4 of them. And as soon as I opened the door, they recognized me, and they jumped me. It was a gang bang.
They remembered, and they were pissed. Yeah,
they knocked me to the ground. They spurred me. They crapped on me. They scratched me. They pecked me. I ran into the house crying my eyes out. My grandmother's seat. I got chicken manure in my hair, big old cut on my face, and my shirt's torn. What in the world got all you? I said, my grandmother's rooster tried to kill me. My grandfather's in there dying, laughing. He had to run off to the bedroom. My grandmother going, George Van Patten, you sent that boy out there. So anyhow, I learned my lesson about that too.
Oh my goodness. So we have gone from Woodstock, from Oakland to Missouri to Woodstock to being a pastor to catching your first trout to being nearly killed by roosters. So where's the next step of the journey then? And that's got to be college.
Off to college, yeah.
Off to college. Walk us through that.
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, I had a ministerial scholarship to go to Southwest Baptist College, which is what it was called back then. Now I think it's called Southern Baptist University, SBU. But anyhow, so I went there, and I was actually able to start that summer after my junior year in high school. And I went that summer, got 12 hours, went back and finished high school, started again the next summer, got another 12 hours. So when my graduating class in high school started their first fall semester, I already had two semesters done. So I got a good jump start. And I stuck it out for about 60 hours or so, and then life happened, and I had to quit college for a while. So I go back many years later. I'd been I went into a career, I was sales in brand new automobiles, and did that for a number of years, and decided I wanted to change what I was doing for a living. Went back to school and got my undergrad in biology, and then later went back and got my master's in education. And doing so because I had the opportunity to go to work, change careers completely, from selling and doing finance work on new car sales to becoming a stream team coordinator for the Conservation Federation of Missouri. That was in 1993.
So what made you decide not to do the ministry anymore?
Well, I don't know. I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. I just felt like that was not what I was supposed to be doing. It was not my calling.
Not your purpose.
Yeah, not my purpose. It was a good experience, and I learned a lot, and it helped me to build and establish my faith, and that's all good. But I knew that was not my calling.
No, so you graduate, and it seems like you get a little bit later start because you had that time with selling cars, and you start working for MDC, which is such a small world. My fiance started her first job was with the Missouri Department of Conservation and Fisheries, and I was telling her about how excited I was to get to see you again and interview you, and she's like, "Oh, I know Mark." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I used to work with him when I was in fisheries. Tell him I said hi."
Yeah.
And she had only glowing great things to say about you. What did you do with MDC then at the beginning?
Oh, at the beginning, I was working with the Missouri Stream Team program. And I actually started out at the Conservation Federation of Missouri as a Stream Team coordinator statewide because the department already had an individual that they were assigning to Stream Team. Later on, they actually put a few more positions in play, and one of the people, actually the first guy who was with the program since the inception, decided to go into a different field in the same agency. And I'll never forget what they told me. They called me up and said, we can hire someone to be a bureaucrat, but no one can have your background in Stream Team like you have, because I started the first Stream Team. They said, we can teach you to be a bureaucrat. So would you like to come over here? Well, it turns out that it was probably a good thing because MDC had been actually providing my salary to CFM. And CFM was to the point where they were needing to make some changes, and so it was probably opportunistic for me to move. And so I went over there. And honestly, working for the Department of Conservation since I was probably 14 or 15 years old was a dream I had. I always kind of wanted to work for them. And I don't know too many boys that wouldn't tell you the same story. Mm-hmm. That they felt an urge to do that. And especially boys like myself who at that point in my life had been spending more time in the woods and fishing and getting into nature. So anyhow, it was a wonderful opportunity for me. And what I did was I worked with the Missouri Stream Team program.
So let's talk about the Stream Team, because you were one of the originals. You started the program. And
no, correction, I started the first Stream Team.
Yeah, you created the first Stream Team. Thank you. So walk us through that, because I'm still getting to know it. I'm not as familiar. Like if someone's listening to this for the first time going, well, what's a Stream Team? What is this he's talking about?
Fair question. First of all, when the program began initially, it was people who were adopting segments of streams and cleaning them up.
It's a lot like the Adopt a Highway program?
Yes, exactly. The difference is the Adopt a Highway program says you've got to go out X many times a year and you clean this stretch. Well, with Stream Teams, they realized really quickly that if you want to keep people active, you don't tell them what to do, you let them tell you what they want to do. So it's grassroots driven that way. And so the teams would adopt a segment of stream, they may clean it, and they may go help another team over here clean theirs. They do their own thing. Well, in time, it started to evolve. Those people who were doing the trash pickups became more intimately involved with their rivers. Now they want to know what the quality of the water in their stream is and what lives there. So they started asking MDC for education in that area. So they brought on water quality monitoring. Well, when they brought that on, they needed to introduce another partner. That was the Department of Natural Resources, because air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, all that is under their purview. So they signed an MOU at the DNR, and we then began offering water quality monitoring training. And we had an introductory level, and then later level 1, level 2, and level 3. So it kept evolving and becoming. We train citizen scientists who can collect data at the same quality as a trained professional, water quality specialist with the state. Those people are really dedicated to their streams. So, and then they wanted more. They wanted fish ID classes. They wanted to understand groundwater systems. And so we started offering these. And that's what made the program so successful. And I can honestly say that they're celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. They're having a big banquet at Echo Bluffs in September to celebrate that. It is the largest and most successful program of its kind anywhere in the world.
Wow.
Literally the world. There was a time when Australia was giving us a run for the money a number of years ago, but theirs was federally mandated and paid for at that level. Money dried up and went away, and so did their program. And there are small programs like it all over the country, but none like this one. We have well over 6,000 teams. Stream team number 1, 1989, still going. Stream team number 3, still going, on up the line. How many volunteer programs do you know that are that old where the original people are still doing their thing? There's something about Missouri rivers and Missouri people that's so connected, they never stop. Now, life does happen, and we would never retire a team number. We always left it alone because life would happen, they would disappear for a while, and then all of a sudden one day we got an activity report in from them 5 years later. They're back on it. It's just the neatest thing. They have 6,000 plus teams now. That's probably got to be in the neighborhood of somewhere around 140, 150,000 volunteers statewide. Just an amazing program. And I like to always say it started with that small stream team number 1 in Waynesville, Missouri, cleaning the Ruby-Doo Creek. And then we got bigger, and we got the governor down. And then it just kept growing from there, and other teams started. And it was word of mouth for a long time. They didn't advertise because they couldn't keep up with it. To kind of back up to getting the first stream team, Marty King, fly fishing buddy of mine from St. Louis, was on the Rivers and Streams Committee at the Conservation Federation. He was the chairman. And good friend. He come down one day and said, "Want to fish?" I said, "Yeah, we're going to go fish the Ruby-Doo." And he said, "I want to tell you about this program we're thinking about doing." And so we started talking about this Adopt a Stream concept. And he had a photocopy of a prototype brochure. And he handed it to me and said, "Look this over, make some edits, put down some suggestions, and get it back to me." I said, "Okay." Set it down. We went and fished. Well, at the end of the day, he went back to St. Louis. I forgot about it. About a week or two later, I saw it, I picked it up. So what did he want me to do with this? And I started reading it, and there was an application in it. So I thought, oh, well, I really like this idea. I'm going to sign up. So I sent it in. Well, they hadn't even started the program yet. So they got this application and said, well, I guess we just started a program. And it just went from there, and it was like a runaway freight train. They couldn't even keep up with it. It was growing so fast, strictly word-of-mouth advertising, and the rest is history, as they say.
Well, walk us through that first one, because you were telling me the story about you trying to get some support to clean up the stream in Wentzville, and how you actually went to antique car show or something like that.
Well, yeah, it was Waynesville.
Excuse me.
Yeah, we were trying to organize a cleanup. There was 5 of us in our little fly fishing group there, and we were trying to get this cleanup going because we had quickly realized it was too big of a job for us. There was big stuff in there that we couldn't tackle, and a lot of it. This river runs right through town, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's almost looked like a landfill with water running through it. And guess what? It had rainbow trout in it. Not native, but some of them been in there long enough they were wild. And I'd been losing my flies on the mattresses and shopping carts and car bumpers.
I've read articles of people talking about the early days of fishing that you were trying to get the drift right behind an old mattress or something like that. Is mind-blowing. So
we started trying to get people involved. Well, I decided to start going to service organizations because I knew that a lot of them had a kind of a requirement that their members do a service project. So I would get on their agenda to speak, and I told them what we were planning and the dates, and could they please assist. And one of them was an antique car club, Cave State Cruisers, I think they call themselves. And I talked to them, and I told them about this old Dodge pickup, 42 Dodge pickup in the river, and they could have all the parts off if they wanted, So they said, we'll be there. Well, anyhow, they showed up. And what was amazing to me, one of the neatest experiences for me after getting this whole thing organized, and I'll go into a little bit more of that in a minute, was while we were cleaning the stream, it was occurring to me that a lot of the trash that was in that river came from right there in the community, and some of the very people that were there helping clean it probably put some of it there. And there was one guy, I remember him very clearly, big old husky guy, had a 55-gallon rusty drum on his shoulder like this, walking out of the river, muttering to himself, if I ever see anybody throwing trash in this river, I'm going to kick their butt. And I thought, yeah, buddy, and you were probably one of them. But thank goodness you're looking at this river differently now.
Yeah.
You know, and I wrote articles in the newspaper, build it, if you build it, they will come. If we clean this river, people will come to your hotels and your restaurants and your shops, and because they want to come and fish here, you know, market this thing. So that was kind of where I was going. Got the city behind the whole thing, and eventually got the governor, John Ashcroft at the time was governor, to come down and get in the river with us and pick up trash. And he did. He worked hard pulling out tires. And then when we all got done, we did a little float trip from the Gasconade from the Piney to the Gasconade, to General Prentice's property. He was an old retired Army general from Fort Leonard Wood, and they threw a big banquet barbecue. It had live music, bluegrass music, and the governor, in his shorts and tennis shoes, put on an apron and served every one of us a scoop of ice cream. You know, just it was a great experience, the governor's cleanup. We planted 2 trees in the Waynesville City Park that day. And he did a big talk about it. And I've said this on a video that was done about our 25th anniversary a number of years ago. But this has always stuck with me as the most amazing and profound statement he made. He looked over at us. The Ruby Doo guys were all standing here, and there was probably 500 people there. It was a big event. He said, you know, guys, what you've started here today is a great thing. But it won't be as great as it can be until tens of thousands more follow in your footsteps. And you know what? They did. We had tens of thousands more actually sign up and start cleaning up streams to the tune of over hundreds of thousands. You know, it's just amazing to me. So that stuck with me as a profound statement that came true.
We started a stream team at CFM for the CLC program, the Conservation Leadership Corps. And it's amazing to see the energy and excitement that people have for cleaning up trash on the river.
Oh, yeah.
It becomes a treasure hunt. We talked about this in depth with the river relief guys. When you've got all these people out there together floating, having fun, but sharing a common purpose and making this place better, it really is an enjoyable experience. And whoever can find the coolest things, and we did it down here on the Current River where it's so clean already that it was hard to find trash to pick up. But there's plenty of sections of river in this state that are unfortunately not like that.
Yeah.
Especially the Missouri River and the Mississippi River. So there's opportunities all over, from small creeks to the biggest rivers. If you've got a pontoon boat, or if you just want to hike with a sack, you can get out and do this, and it's a good way to get kids involved in nature. It's a great way to get your family. Maybe they don't like to fish, maybe they don't like to hunt. Everybody likes to get outside and stomp around in a creek and do some good conservation work by picking up garbage.
You know, and if you're on a bigger river and you don't really want to get in it, everything that's on those banks and up into the woods in the floodplain area will eventually end up in that river every time the water comes up. So if you're out there picking up trash in the floodplain, you're still doing a good thing for that river. So if you got little kids and you don't want them in the river, clean up the floodplain, clean up along the banks.
And it's a nice reminder, too, because I know I always bring a little bag or something to put trash in, that if I'm just out fishing or wade fishing and I see a plastic bottle, or even if just a wad of line, just not to turn your back, not to be like, well, I didn't do that, so I don't need to worry, you know, that I always try to leave a place nicer than it was when I got there.
Yeah, we have to acknowledge again that this program is really only able to exist because we have the conservation sales tax.
Yeah.
This is another example of, if that conservation sales tax ever went away, we couldn't fund stream teams. We couldn't fund all the bags. You talk about having a little sack. The mesh bags that you see at all these canoe liveries that are paid for and provided by the department, which is really meaning they're paid for and provided by us, the citizens, to have a tool in place at every river that receives a crowd that we can use to pick up trash.
Yes.
And so many people take advantage of it. It's great.
So of all the years of stream teaming, I asked the Missouri River Relief the same question. What was the craziest thing you found cleaning up?
Oh my gosh, we've found so many crazy things. It's hard to, some things we can't talk about on the air.
Well, those are the ones I want to hear.
Literally, I found a backpack filled with adult sex toys. Filled with them. Unbelievable. And I mean, I backed away from that so fast because I didn't know what I was going to catch. Got a big long stick and put it in the trash.
Someone was having a hell of a time out there in the woods.
Well, I think they may have been afraid they were going to get caught and they threw them away,
What river was that?
Let's see, where was I? I think I was on the Piney River.
I did a stream team cleanup with you over in St. Louis. I can't remember exactly where we were, but that was a couple of years ago, and we filled up a couple trailers full of trash.
Yeah?
I have pictures from that day.
Cool. I wonder what creek we were on. No telling.
I think it had to do with the Merrimack.
Oh, the Merrimack.
It was a flooded area, so we weren't actually in the water on a river.
Oh, was that at Arnold?
It was at Arnold.
Yeah.
We were cleaning out that flooded area.
Yeah, and that place. Now, there's an amazing stream team right there. That stream team 211. And they're up to stream team 6,000. So, they've been doing it a long time. They are so well organized, and they will travel to other parts of the state to assist other teams if they need it. And they have cutting saws, or what do you call those, cut saws? Chop saws, winches, little small front-end loader tractors and trailers that they'll haul there. They pull buses and dumpsters and everything else out of rivers that are full of gravel and wash machines and you name it. And they'll travel wherever. They assist River Relief all the time. Work with them as well on Missouri River.
So with 6,000 teams, does that cover like every county in the state of Missouri?
Every county in the state of Missouri has at least one stream team. Some have many more, but every county, even those up there in the far northern parts of the state where the streams are just like muddy ditches more than anything else, they still value those streams.
Another thing that's great about the program is no section of water is exclusive.
No.
So all three of us can start a stream team on the same exact section of water. If we wanted to go right over here and say we want from Poltite to Round Spring on the Current River, there could be 35 stream teams that cover that section.
And that section of the river just is the benefactor. It wins because it gets a lot of TLC.
Oh, man, that is so cool.
So that was actually your career.
Right.
But you had a secondary career as well as the host of a television show called The Tying Bench. So I knew of you long before I knew you from watching this TV show. And it was mostly about fly tying, but it also incorporated some fly fishing. How did that get started, first of all?
It's interesting. I'd met a guy at a bar. Anyhow, he was a musician and was performing there, and the bartender knew me and knew him, and we were all three talking, and he had said something to the musician about me tying flies and being a fly fisherman. And the musician, turns out, is also a producer for television shows. And he said, really, I've always wanted to do a TV show like that, a how-to show for PBS. He said, would you be interested in doing that with your fly tying? I said, absolutely not. I'm too busy. This went on for a few years, and he'd bug me about it. And finally one day I said, okay, let's try it. So we did a demo in his backyard on his back deck with just a bush behind me and the leaves blowing in the wind and my feathers blowing everywhere. And he sent it in to one PBS station in Warrensburg, KMOS, to get their feedback on it. And the first question they asked him was, who did your backdrop? And he said, God. So the guy said, well, he did a great job. It looks wonderful. He said, I like this. Can you do more? And he said, I think so. So he got a hold of me and he said, they liked it. Let's do some shows and we'll send it up to the satellite for PBS. And the way it works is on educational television, they have a satellite. You send it to the satellite through PBS, and then they disseminate it to all the PBS stations, and they choose whether or not they want to show it. So that's kind of how we got started with it. And then so we started tying on my back porch. And my back porch at that time was just a screen-in porch. We had all kind of great ambiance. Chainsaws, ATVs, dogs barking in the background, because I lived in an area where there were other houses. So we finally decided after season 2, I had been wanting to convert that big area into a full year-round room, put windows all the way around. But before we did, though, I got to tell you this. They were just screen windows behind me, and every once in a while a breeze would catch them just right. The sun would hit them, and they'd just turn total white, and then I'd become just a black silhouette, for a nanosecond. Cut. So that was a real hassle. So I took out I cut out screen, put a frame around it so I could take it in and out, and we took it out. And we're all in the middle of a show, and a bird flies right straight in at the camera, freaks the camera guy out. He took off screaming like a girl through the house. We finally got the bird out of the house, and this has got to stop. So we ended up, because they would bring all that equipment down there and set it all up. It would take a long time to set everything up. So we finally decided to turn that into a year-round room with windows and floors that didn't have decking, where my tools would fall through and we couldn't get them back. Anyhow, and there was a hole in the roof that leaked real bad and usually got on the equipment. We got all that up and going and just turned that into the studio. And we did 200 episodes. Time flies. Going on location to do different things. There was 3 segments to the show. The first segment, you tied a fly. Second segment was called Mark's Tippets, a little play on words there. But it could be anything from how to put on a pair of neoprene waders to fly fishing at a certain place, Bennett Springs or wherever, or whatever. And then we go back and tie a second fly in the third segment. And anyhow, it got picked up by a lot of stations around the country. I think there was 22 or 3 states that picked it up. And there are some states where it's still playing, and I haven't done a show in, 4 years. There's 200 episodes, though. Star Trek only had 69.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How many seasons is that? How many episodes per season?
We did 13 seasons.
Wow.
Where are you burying all the gold from the royalty checks?
Yeah, well, PBS doesn't pay royalties. It's educational TV. There was no money to be made at that without just getting a lot of huge sponsors, which I didn't feel like doing. But what I did get was all my flight time materials and things like that provided by the sponsor, so I could do the show with them. And so that was good. So I did it basically for the love of the sport, because I truly I'm almost evangelistic about fly fishing. I love to teach it. I love to introduce other people to it and let them feel just how wonderful an accomplishment it is when you tie a fly yourself and you fool that fish and you hook him and you bring him to hand with something you made yourself. It's just an amazing feeling.
Now, how was the transition of doing something you love to then having to do it in front of a camera? Because everyone has something they enjoy, but I even know, being a radio guy, I can talk into a microphone, but then if you put a camera in front of me, that's like a whole different ball of nerves. It's a really weird, even though I'm a professional speaker, for some reason staring at that soulless lens can really throw a person off.
And honestly, I don't know why, but I had 0 issues with it. I just felt really comfortable in front of the lens. And I've always been extrovertish anyway, so talking's never been a problem. And then the camera just didn't seem like a threat to me, I guess. So I had no problem. And what I envisioned as I talked to the lens was all the people who are watching. I was talking to them. And so that's what made it work for me.
Is there anywhere people can go to watch these old episodes?
There's a couple of other episodes. My producer was not really... he was lazy, I think. He didn't put many out there, but there's a couple on YouTube that you can see. Just go to YouTube and put in my name, and there's a couple of the older shows on there.
Do you have any shows that really stand out, like they're your favorite for any particular reason?
Oh my gosh, after 200 episodes, they all kind of ran together. After a while, it's like, okay, here we go again. Yeah, there were a few. I tell you, some of this funny stuff. There's one scene in the beginning of every show where they're doing credits or whatever, where you see a fish on, and then you see another fish on. And my wife loves to tell everybody that's around when she sees that, that's my fish. When I'm on camera, I can't catch fish, but she can catch one right after another. So they had to film her fish for me fishing. So she will never let me live that down.
So let's transition to actually talking about fishing, and mine and Mark here for some advice on what to do and use in this area. Starting with our favorite place, mine and Nathan's, the Upper Current River, just below the park. Really, from the park through the first 10 miles or so of water up there. How are you fishing it, and what flies are you going to have in your box?
Well, that is a question I get a lot. And it's actually a lot more complicated answer than what people realize. I can't just say, well, you're just going to need this and this. It depends on the time of the year, water temperature, water levels, so many other factors, barometric pressure, just so many factors that come into play, whether it's overcast or sunny and so on, that will make a difference on what insects are hatching. If it's in the winter, it's different than if it's in the spring or the fall or the summer.
All right, let me narrow the question then.
Okay.
We're talking September, October.
Ah, yes.
And you want to have a box that contains both dry flies and nymphs.
And streamers.
You also want to have some streamers and anything else that, might be fun, like a surface popper or mouse.
Yeah, we found out that there's one called a sex dungeon already. The sex dungeon streamer.
I thought Bitch Creek Nymph was bad.
So what's in your box in those categories?
In those categories, my box will have Renegade size 16. It'll have Crackleback size 16 in traditional color and also in a royal blue body with the brown hackle and the peacock pulled over. I'll also have some generic dries like an Adams and that are the mayfly style. The other ones are more representative of caddises, I believe. At least that seems to be when they're most effective, is with caddis hatch. An Adams is always good for your mayfly hatch. Always going to have some blue-winged olives. If you happen to get to the river and things have been a little blustery this time of the year, it can happen. They'll come off. And when they're coming off, and tricos. Got to have those tricos anytime during the warmer months. So right now even, through October. And then I would go into nymphs, gold-ribbed hare's ear, prince nymph, and pheasant tail. My number one pick will always be pheasant tail first. I like a pheasant tail done like a copper john, where the abdomen is copper wire, and then the thorax has got the peacock with the pheasant with the peacock over the back as a wing pad. And for a streamer, I'm a woolly booger guy. I got to have big black woolly boogers when the water's clear, or even when it's not. I like a black woolly booger, but a purple woolly booger is effective as well, and depending on water conditions, olive. So I always have a black, purple, and an olive in my box.
And that's because clear water and bright skies, you want dark-colored flies.
Right. You want dark-colored flies.
And when water's more turbid, say after a rain, do you want to switch to a whiter or a lighter fly?
A brighter, something with some attractant, a little glitter or something in it.
And your woolly buggers, and I've used a lot of them, they work.
Yeah.
Bead heads.
Yep.
They're a little smaller. What size are you tying?
I like them actually in a size 12 and 10s. 10's more my typical size. I have tied them all the way down to a 4. It depends on what I'm fishing for. If I'm going smallmouth, I'll use 4s. But for trout, usually a 10, sometimes an 8.
Do you ever use egg patterns?
No. My grandfather was so instrumental in my fly fishing development, and he taught me there are certain things you do not do. You never lay your fly rod on the ground because someone will step on it and then you'll go to hell when you die. You never put natural bait on a fly rod or you'll go to hell when you die. And that includes glow balls. And that was his words. So I never used them. Now, I did discover while teaching fly fishing that glow balls definitely have their place. If you get somebody who just is not able to see that take and get that hook set, they will see a glow ball and see the take because it's a sight fishing. And it works. It helps them to kind of get the feel for that take. So anyhow, that answers your question why I don't carry glow balls in my box. However, when I am teaching, I do usually keep some on hand for those students who just can't seem to get that take down.
So we've talked a lot about the trout parks before on this podcast. I love them. Even though I don't go there very much, I like to go to opening day, and I'll go back a couple times a year just because of the culture of people there who love to fish. I like going where everybody likes to fish. And these trout parks are just such an amazing opportunity for new fly fishermen. For people that have maybe been trying, or even those that haven't even begun to try yet, these trout parks are going to have fish. They've got clean, clear areas for you to cast. It's not a big river. It's a small water, so you can cover it well. For somebody that's new to it, Mark, what exactly do they need? And I'm talking equipment to flies, to clothing, everything that you can think of to start fishing at the trout parks, to start fly fishing at the trout parks.
Okay, a lot is going to depend on their budgets, of course, but the basic equipment they're going to need is a pair of waders, and I'm going to recommend that they get chest waders because the hip waders are wonderful, but I guarantee you're going to get over the top of them at some point every time you go, and that water's cold, and it's not comfortable to be walking around in waders full of water. So get chest waders, but get breathable ones. Don't get neoprene. It doesn't get cold enough in Missouri, even in winter, to merit neoprene waders because there's lots of warm stuff you can wear. The breathable ones will wick away moisture from your body, will allow the oxygen to move through, respirate, and you don't sweat as bad. And, if you're going to be standing in one place, boot foot's fine. If you are going to try to expand your fishing opportunities, you might want to get the separate boot with stocking foot wader. They hike better. They're more like wearing a hiking boot. Whereas the boot-footed ones where the boot's attached to the wader is a little more clumsy. But if you're just standing in one place, like a lot of the folks do at Bennett Spring and trout parks, and maybe just getting out and going in your car for lunch and going right back, the boot foots are great.
I have a hard time finding a boot with a boot fit that actually fits my foot comfortably. I always just go sleeve and try to find a nice wading boot to put on my waders.
Yeah, it's always better, I think, long run to go with a stocking foot wader with a separate boot. I learned that years and years ago. The only exception I have to that is that when I was doing tree revetments on streams where I needed something really tough and durable, then I'd wear the chest waders made of rubber that would really hard to move around in. But anyhow, so you need your waders. You're going to need a fishing vest or a shirt with a lot of pockets. But a fishing vest, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a nice vest. And the vest, what's nice, you got plenty of pockets, and you also have some D-rings where you can hang a pair of nippers. You can use fingernail clippers, or you can buy regular fly fishing nippers, because you're going to be changing your flies a lot. You're going to have to cut those lines, and you're going to get tangled up. It's just part of it. A pair of hemostats, the locking little pliers, are great for removing the hook from the fish if you decide not to keep it. Maybe it's a small one, or you just don't want it. Those are very handy for that. Less trauma to the fish. You don't have to handle them. You don't have to get slime off of them and onto you, which is bad. It's uncomfortable for you, but it's bad for them. A landing net is always nice. They have some new ones now that are silicone nets. They don't damage the fish so bad. They have catch and release nets that are shallow, where if you don't want to keep one, you get in there, you get your hemostats, unhook them, and just lower the net back into the water, and off he goes. You're going to need a reel now and a rod. When you buy your rod and reel, there's a couple of rules I always tell students. Number one, if the base of the rod where it goes into the handle, the grip, is as big as your thumb, don't buy it. It should be not much bigger than a number 2 lead pencil, because you're looking then at a higher modulus graphite that's going to be a much better fly rod and give you a lot less noodle whipping. Those big fat butted ones, as I like to call them, are just noodles, and they're terrible, and you learn bad habits with them. So spend $50 to $100 for a fly rod. You can spend thousands, but $50 to $100, nothing less than $50 for the rod itself. Then you need a reel. Now, you don't have to go nuts on a reel. You can get a $25 reel on sale somewhere and do the job just fine. A disc drag is preferred over some of the other kinds. So if it has disc drag, that's kind of like the brakes on your car. And they work really well, and they're adjustable. Fly line. This is the best way to go is to buy, if you're just starting out, is to buy one already put together for you. Fly rod, reel, line, already on it. You got to match the weight of the line to the weight of the rod. Now, I'm not talking about how much the line weighs and how much the rod weighs. Actually, I am talking about how much the line weighs. But the rod weight is what weight of fly line does it take to make this rod work? I'm going to recommend a 5-weight fly rod for anybody just starting out because it's a good trout rod and you can use it in the pond for bluegill or whatever. 5-weight fly rod, make sure your fly line is for a 5-weight rod. It'll say right on it 5. Now, there's a code on the box. If that code says WF 5F, that's what you want. Whiskey Foxtrot 5 Foxtrot. The WF stands for weight forward. When you're just learning to cast, a weight forward line casts much easier. And I've been fly fishing since I was 12. I'm 66. I still use a weight forward fly line. I just like the way they cast. The 5 stands for the weight. If you took off the first 30 feet of that fly line and you weighed it, it weighs X many grams, those grams equate to this weight category, and it's a 5 weight. So you matched your rod. And the F, the last F, stands for floating. A floating line can be sank if you put weight on it, but a sinking line cannot be floated. So if you want something that does everything, go floating, because you can float or you can sink. And depending on the different kind of flies, you may want to do that, and the different kind of water. If it's deep, fast water, you need to get down, you can put on something to make it sink, where you would think about using a sinking line. But if it's shallower, slower water, you don't want that sinking line because you can't make it come up and float and you're going to be hanging on the rocks. So the F, floating. So fly rod, reel, line, you're going to need a leader. You got to get a leader that's appropriate for fishing at Bennett Springs. I'm going to recommend you buy a 6X. I'm not going to go into what that means because you got to take my class and buy my books. Yeah. 6X is a nice, fine, usually about 3-pound test line, depending on whether you buy a good quality brand. And it's in a park where you get a lot of fishermen. The fish get a little leery to the leaders. They start seeing them. And if you go fluorocarbon, it makes it really hard for them to see. And if you go 6X, it's nice and thin. 5X is what I fish with on the rivers here, but in the parks I'll start with a 6. Sometimes when the water's gin clear, you got to go even smaller, and that's a bigger number. That's 7 or 8, rarely 8. A lot of people like to talk pound test. You want to pay more attention to the diameter than the pound test. The diameter of this line here is 6 1/1000ths of an inch. It's a 7X. This one here, no, it's a 5X. I mean, this one here is 6 1/1000ths of an inch in diameter, but it's a 5X. They're both 5X, but this one is 4-pound test, and this one is only 2-pound test, which they're both the same diameter. They're both 5X, but this is half the pound test. So you don't want that one. So you go by the diameter, and you go by pound test as the final decision. I don't know if that made sense to you, but you can buy one brand of 5X that's 2-pound, and you can buy another one that's only 3. Which one do you want to trust your big fish to? The 3-pounder, not the 2-pounder. Same diameter. Whew, that was hard.
This is why I throw spoons. That's confusing as shit.
Yeah. Got to take my class. And the other thing you're going to need, then you got your leader, then you're going to need your flies. I also want to throw this out. It's really important you wear a hat, because errant fly lines can have a fly come right back in the back of your head at 100 miles an hour and bury it right in your scalp. Wearing a hat and wearing eye protection, whether it's sunglasses or prescription glasses, something to keep it from poking you in the eye, because that can happen too. The wind changes right in the middle of a back cast, boom. If you go sunglasses, get polarized. You got to be able to see in that water. You don't want to step off in that 20-foot hole because you couldn't see it for the glare. Polarized will cut that glare, and look, you see the fish. You didn't see him a minute ago until you put on them glasses, but there he is. So it gives you something to polarize. Helps you to see the fish and see the bottom, see the rock or the log you might trip over. Those are the main things. That's your equipment. Then you need your flies.
No, I want to know what flies. That's the only part of this I'm waiting for. Tell me what flies I need at the trout parks.
Okay, at the trout parks, always carry cracklebacks in 16 and 18. Smaller. They're smaller flies there. Brassies, and the copper brassies, in a size 18 or smaller. Scuds, 16 or smaller. You can never go wrong at Bennett with a pheasant tail nip, 16 or smaller. Everything's small there. It's a small fly stream. In the morning, first thing in the morning, if you like to throw a jig or just a weighted marabou, black and yellow. For about 30 minutes first thing when the whistle blows, they won't leave it alone. 30 minutes later, you couldn't get them to look at it for the life dependent on it. But for at the immediate whistle, for about 30 minutes, you'll catch your limit almost on them. Black and yellow. You tie them to where when it's in the water, the yellow is on the bottom and the black is on top. So a small dumbbell weight or a weighted wire tied to the top of the hook shank, whatever, to cause it to flip, or just tie them that way. Yellow on the bottom, black on the top. That way it's representing the yellow belly and the black back of a small minnow. And they will just tear those up.
Now, because I'm trying to
Renegade too.
I'm trying to teach myself how to fly fish. That I'm not looking to be an expert. I just want to be good enough, since the more people I meet, the more friends I make, a lot of them fly fish. I'm going to be a spin guy because that's in my blood, growing up in the hills of Oregon and just being a hillbilly. It's what I love to do. I love throwing big baits for big fish, but I like the idea of fly fishing, and I wanted to be just good enough not to make an ass out of myself in front of my friends, pretty much. So what would be your one tip for someone that knows fishing but is a little unfamiliar with fly fishing, but wants to be good enough not to be made fun of?
Okay. My advice, find someone who's an accomplished fly angler. Become their friend and go fish with them.
What are you doing later?
Yeah, and explain it. Say, I really want to learn the basics so I can just do this. And I'm not going to make a lifelong thing out of it, but I want to be able to do it. Well, first of all, fly fishing is a lifelong sport, and it's a lifelong learning sport. Things change, new materials, new flies, new this, new that, new equipment. But the basic fundamentals of it never changed. Fly fishing dates back to the ancient Macedonians. So it's been around a long, long time. There's actually recorded history describing the locals fishing with colorful feathers and fur on hooks, catching speckled fish in ancient Macedonia. So the first book ever written was written in the 1400s by a woman named Julianne Berner. I mean, it's just been around forever. So it's not something you learn overnight, but you can get accomplished enough at casting and actually fishing. So a lot of people think fly fishing is casting. They see the Hollywood thing going on. Line in the air, beautiful sweeping curves and all that. There are no fish up there. The fish are in the water. You got to learn to work that water with your rod. Learn how to make that insect that you're representing with your fly act like that natural insect would act in the water. It needs to be in the same location in the water that it would normally be. So I put on a pheasant tail nymph that represents a mayfly nymph. Where does a mayfly nymph hang out? On the rocks on the bottom. They get knocked loose. They're rolling along the bottom. That's where the fish will grab them. Okay, so you need to get your fly that you realize represents a mayfly nymph and get it on the bottom. Well, how do you do that? You got this floating line up here on the top going pretty fast because the water current at the top of the surface is much faster than the water current on the bottom because of the friction from the rocks and the gravel and lugs and whatever. So what do? Well, you got to learn to mend your line. You take that floating fly line, you toss it upstream and make a big belly. So now your fly is downstream from your line. It has a chance to sink. And before that fly line moves on down below it, it has a chance to bounce along the bottom. And that's a lot of times where you're going to catch fish. Also, though, you can catch them when it makes that swing on the end. That mayfly nymph that's been on the bottom, all of a sudden as the current catches that fly line on the surface, starts to pull up like this up towards the surface. As it's doing that, it's very vulnerable to the fish. Now, you say, oh, is that natural? Yes. When a mayfly insect gets ready to hatch into an adult flying insect, it swims to the surface. and it cracks its exoskeleton, and the adult comes out, and then it becomes fish food in a different form, like a butterfly. So in that transition there, when it makes that swing, right before you pick up your rod to cast again, you might want to try setting your hook, because there may be a fish on. I call that the surprise at the end of the swing. I don't know if people on radio can see me doing my arm movements here, but hopefully I'm describing it well enough.
Podcasts are a very visual medium.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, we know you're not a bait fisherman, but we've got a deal here at Driftwood Outdoors that we call a mystery bait bucket. So we need you to reach in there and pick a question out of the mystery bait bucket and read it to us.
This looks like an old minnow bucket I once saw.
Then we're all going to answer it, starting with you.
If you were forced to move to another state, where are you going and why? Alaska. Obviously for the fishing.
He had that answer out before he even finished reading it.
I'll tell you guys, I fished Alaska a couple of times for sockeye salmon. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful experience. And I want to go back as many times as I can possibly crunch in my lifetime. Nothing like a sockeye salmon fresh out of the ocean. I mean, literally right out of the ocean on a fly rod. Oh man, you talk about a tussle. 10, 15-pound fish, just giving it all. You think about that fish. It just left the ocean. It's on a long journey, and it just started. So this puppy is powerful. And when you say run with it, you don't mean let him run. That means you better start running down the gravel bar. You're going to be out of fly line in a minute. Great experience. So that's my answer.
Montana, for me. Go back to Montana. Spent 4 years living out there. Really enjoyed it. Different time of life in my early 20s. Going back now, I think I would enjoy it even more for a diversity of reasons. Just so many different opportunities out there to get into wilderness areas and really slow down in life. And it would probably be on the eastern side of Montana. You know, most of the population and growth and newfound excitement about the state is in Bozeman and Missoula, up by Kalispell and around the big Flathead area, Flathead Lake. But Billings is where we were at, and really like Billings. The location, all the different prairie opportunities in eastern Montana, along with the Bighorn, and I like Red Lodge and the Stillwater River, that whole area. So I could see myself settling back into Montana, close to Billings again.
You have thought a lot about that. And obviously, you've kind of got the part of the state and everything that you're most interested in, why, and I think that's great. And see, I haven't. To answer that question, Alaska is a great place I want to go, but they would have to pry my fingers off the Missouri boundaries for me to leave this state.
And we were actually talking about that last night, because I grew up on the Oregon coast, right? Like, if you've seen the movie Goonies, I grew up like 30 minutes away from the Goonies adventure. And right on the mouth, you could see the Columbia River. You could see Washington from my parents' house. And I yearn for that all the time. Beautiful area. I love it. The salmon, the steelhead, the sturgeon, the elk, the deer. So many opportunities in that state, in that area. But being down here this weekend and setting up the cameras and catching deer and doing some fishing last night, throwing topwater for smallmouth and these crystal clear streams, like, it would be hard pressed for me if I had to decide to go back to Oregon or be able to own some property down here on the Current or around the Ozark area, because I've fallen just head over heels in love with this area. But if I had to choose moving out of state, it would be going back to the Oregon coast, like in Astoria or something like that, where you can still fish the big rivers, the Columbia. You can still get out in the bays and chase silvers, and then you still get the rivers and the streams for the winter steelhead fishing and things like that, and the native cutthroat. That I just love the Oregon coast so much, but I mean, down here is a very close second. It'd be hard-pressed to leave this area.
It was after midnight last night when I got the wild hair to go fishing. So we packed up and went to the creek and went down to this bluff area. And the moon was shining, and your eyes adjusted quickly, and it was bright enough to see well. Throwing jitterbugs into this big pool and had a monster come up and smash it. And he came out of the water a couple times. I mean, it was a legitimate big smallmouth. and he got off, of course. But it was exciting to go out there with a plan. I knew if we went down there and threw topwater into that hole, there'd be a fish in there.
Something would come.
You
Yeah.
have an opportunity.
And just standing there and looking at the incredible beauty of that hole in that moment. These Ozarks are just so special.
And that big gibbous moon last night lit the surrounding up so nice.
Oh, it does. And it speaks to your soul. And that kind of brings us full circle in this whole interview of just the power of being on the water and the power of fishing, that we definitely early on hit on some pretty heavy subjects of your life and where you came from and where you ended up. And if you could talk a moment just about how fly fishing really helped carry a lot of that burden, or for you, therapeutic of just kind of cleansing one's soul or getting you through a rough time.
Fly fishing saved you.
Yeah.
It did. And I'll tell you, it's pretty basic. I did the preacher thing, and then I decided I wasn't called. And after that, I kind of went wild. And I started kind of sliding back to the way I was in California and getting involved in stuff I shouldn't. And a friend of mine called me, and I hadn't spoken to him in years until just recently. But he called me up and said, "Hey, I met this old man. He's got a trailer down on Taney-Como, and he's invited us to come and fish. You want to go?" And I hadn't fished for a while, probably for 3 or 4 months, and I thought, yeah, get out of this mess I've kind of gotten into. Yeah, let's go. I went. We had a blast. I got hooked again. Every time it seemed like I would start to kind of get away from the life that I really loved, fly fishing would pull me back. An opportunity would come along for me to go fish, and then I'd be eat up with it again. And my grandparents, of course, being the great people that they were, and the loving and caring grandparents they were, always just kind of overlooked any of my issues. They knew that deep down I was good. I had a good heart. And as long as I kept that fly fishing in my life, it would always draw me back. And my grandfather told me that one time. He said, it'll always draw you back. He said, teach a child to fish, and it'll always draw him back. And it did. So I honestly have to say it saved my life, because if it hadn't, I might have gone back to California. And I might have got right back in that same mess I was in. And as it was, I didn't. And I ended up having a productive life and being able to do good things for the state of Missouri through the stream team program and for our streams. And I've been able to spread the gospel of fly fishing ever since.
Still a preacher, man.
Yeah, all the way.
Well, I think Dos Equis got it wrong. That is not the most interesting man in the world. Mark Van Patten,
Easily.
For the crown. Most interesting man in the world. So thankful to have you as a friend, man, and the times that we've gotten to spend fishing. It's been amazing to learn these stories, and it gets better every time I hear them. So thanks for sharing.
Is that because I keep changing little nuances? Because I forgot what I said?
I think it's because the moonshine keeps getting better.
It keeps getting a little bit
go.
stronger. Do we have any final thoughts, a final cast, if you will?
That was mine.
That was yours? I mean, this has been an honor. I've only heard stories of the legend that you are, and you've lived up to every moment of it. And 3 years ago, hearing just a glimpse of what we got today, and it just the fire in my belly of wanting to know more and hear more of your stories and your life and the incredible life you've lived, and the good word and the message that you left. I'm just so honored to be here and getting it on tape so everyone else can share it with us.
You're embarrassing the devil out of me.
I'm not doing it on purpose, man. It comes from the heart. It's absolutely incredible, and it's a real honor, and I can only hope that when I am your age, I can look back and say that I've done as much good for an industry or for a sport that I love as much as you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And you will. You've got that same fire. You've got that same love. You will. We all do, if we care. And that's the bottom line.
Well, thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Time for the Driftwood Outdoors Gear Review.
We joke and we kid that this is Brandon Butler's favorite part of the podcast. He loves getting gear and he loves giving it a review. So, Brandon, what do you have for us today?
Today I've got a CVA Acura muzzleloader, but a little backstory. Growing up in Indiana when I did, you couldn't use rifles. That's a new thing in the state. And slug guns weren't much better than shooting a 1-ounce ball of lead out of a smooth barrel bird gun. So muzzleloaders were our tool, and at the time we were mostly using just good old-fashioned side hammers. Mine was the $99 Springfield Hawken out of the Bass Pro catalog I got one winter. But muzzleloaders were what we were using, and you were lucky if you could be accurate out to 75 yards or so. That has changed. These CVA Acura muzzleloaders are so accurate, up to 200, 300 yards for some people. This one, it has a Bergara barrel on it. These are the same barrels that they're putting on the premium Bergara rifles. It's got a Conus Pro 3x9x40 scope. The whole thing is just comfortable to hold. There's rubber on the forearm and on the grip. It just fits really ergonomically well. It's a break action, shooting the 209 primers. So it's just an all-around great gun. It even comes with a Quake sling. If you don't know what the Quake slings are, they're basically a composite. They've got rigidity to them so they don't slip off your shoulder. We've come a long way since the muzzleloaders of the late 80s and early 90s. We're basically shooting a single-shot rifle at this point. And if I'm shooting a muzzleloader, I'm shooting a CVA Acura.
Now, mine's unique in the fact that I didn't buy it and it wasn't given to me. I actually caught it in the bottom of a river. That I'm talking about my Scientific Angler's fly rod. That we were joking, and I've joked on this podcast before about how I've been teaching myself how to fly fish for the last couple of years. And I got my fly rod spin fishing on a river, bouncing, you guessed it, a spoon off the bottom, and I ended up catching this fly rod. And I sent you the text and you're like, that's a great beginner rod. And it has been. Like, if you're trying to learn how to fly fish, that you don't need to go out and spend $500, $600, $1,000 on gear. That these rods are reasonable and they can do a plethora of things. Like, I mean, the one that I got is an 8-foot 6-inch 2-piece 5/6 weight, and you can use it for trout, for crappie, bluegill, even some bass on occasion. And I can't say enough about it. I went and put a little cheapo White River reel on it because, I mean, really the pole is what you really need to pay attention to when it comes to fly fishing, I've learned. And I'm in love with this fly rod. So here is my vote of confidence. If you're just learning how to fly fish or you want to get into it, go get yourself a Scientific Anglers or bounce a spoon off the bottom of a river and hope you catch one.
That wraps up another episode. Our numbers are continuing to increase. We thank you very much for listening. Again, we hope you'll share this with your friends, family, coworkers, anybody that you think might enjoy it. Also, if you really like it, go on iTunes and give us a review.
Hell, you can even share it with your enemies.
Keep them closer.
And you can get all the information about our guests at driftwoodoutdoors.com.
We will see you down the trail.
Early mornings, long nights, cold, heat, wind, and so many other factors can stand between a sportsman and the trophy they're pursuing.
That's why it's so gratifying when it all comes together. To preserve that special memory, sportsmen often turn to a taxidermist.
At Driftwood Outdoors, we turn to Scenic Rivers Taxidermy in Salem, Missouri. Larry and Heath have mounted 6 bucks for us in the last 4 years, and every one of them looks awesome. These guys are true artists and experts at deer and elk, but can handle all your taxidermy needs from fish to birds to bears.
For a taxidermy experience you can trust, turn to Scenic Rivers Taxidermy. Visit them online at scenicriverstaxidermy.com or find them on Facebook, Scenic Rivers Taxidermy.